All right, this Monday we are joined by Nick Carroll, head coach of Totino-Grace High School, also co-owner, co-founder, right, of Prep
Yeah.
Sport or Prep
Yeah.
Hoops. Is that the
Mhm.
right title? All
Yeah,
right, so
co-founder, yeah.
again, Coach, really appreciate you coming on. I know this is a busy time for you with everything COVID-19 related, with your, obviously your coaching, but also your private business that you run. And so, thanks for coming on today.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be on.
All right, so we always start with our coaching Wikipedia page. So where'd you play? Where'd you coach? What led you to Totino-Grace?
Yeah. So I grew up in St. Paul in Highland Park. I played at Cretin-Derham, and then I went on and played at Hamlin for 4 years. I played for Nelson Whitmore, so he had been the head coach at Brockport State in New York, and then actually one of your previous guests, Chris Hopkins, was one of my assistant coaches, and then Joe Berger, who's the head coach at Edina High School, and then also Jamison Rustoven, who was the head coach at St. Mary's. Those were all that was my college staff at Hamlin. And so I played at Hamlin, finished in 2010. Going into my junior year in college, started coaching AAU basketball for the Minnesota Magic. And that's actually how I met my current business partner, Jake Phillips. We had both reached out to the Minnesota Magic to I think just, have some fun coaching in the summertime. And the Magic ended up linking us up to coach together. And Jake had just finished up a very decorated career at Carleton College. And so kind of blossomed from there. After that, coached for the Minnesota Fury after 2 years with the Magic. And then after a couple of years with the Fury, went on to coach with Minnesota Pump and Run, which is now D1 Minnesota. And then spent time coaching at Augsburg College, spent time coaching at Minnetonka High School. And then now obviously at Totino-Grace.
So you obviously have some experience coaching or playing at the college level in the MIAC with Hamlin, and a little experience there at Augsburg as well, and AAU and Minnetonka, now TG. So what are some of the biggest things that you've learned that have kind of guided your coaching to where you're at right now this season, or this coming season?
Yeah, I was fortunate to get exposure to a lot of different types of personalities and coaching styles, through my early playing career, and then into coaching. So when I was at Hamlin, my head coach Nelson Whitmore had come in from Brockport State, and he brought a pretty unconventional style to a pretty traditional MIAC conference, where possession value is really important in that league. Teams have pretty solid structured offense. Obviously, like the St. Thomas's of the world, like the top end talent teams, maybe loosened up their offense a little bit, but they, every year they take care of the ball as well as anybody in the country. But when Coach Whitmore came in, he wanted to try to score 100 points a game. And so that was, for me, I think all kids get excited when they hear that stuff. But I think actually putting it into practice and running efficient offense and being able to play fast, that there's actually, a lot of skill and strategy and method that goes into that, for, what shot quality looks like and tempo looks like and all those different things. So, but we also, we mixed a lot of different stuff. We ran the amoeba defense for a little bit in college. We got up and pressured the ball and played full court and did some run and jump stuff. So I got exposure to a lot of different things as a player. And then going straight out of college and then coaching at Augsburg, Aaron Grease is an offensive mastermind. Augsburg has had so much success. They love to shoot the three. They brought in a very specific type of player. And I think being at Augsburg really showed me it's not as much about, you want to have really talented players, but I think having a system that fits the players on your roster really plays to their strengths, and then hammering skill development that fits into your ecosystem. I think, a lot of times as coaches, we think that just by getting kids into the gym, you're automatically going to get better. And we kind of go a mile wide and an inch deep, where we got kids working on their ball handling and their shooting and all these different things, but we're not really emphasizing the types of shots they're going to make or take in games or take within our offense. And Aaron Grease is unbelievable at getting game type shots, very offensive minded. And so that was beneficial. That was beneficial for me for me there. And so, and then, Tom Dasovich I coached under Das at Minnetonka. Das ran great sets, and he was really, I guess, formative for me in rebuilding. I look back at those days at Minnetonka as we've built stuff at TG and kind of reestablished culture and tried to make it be kind of a quote unquote basketball school. Das had come into a very average Minnetonka program and got things going in a hurry there. And a huge part of that is just really reframing the way that kids and families think about their commitment to basketball and sports in the school across the board.
Let's talk more about that skill development piece. So what would be an example of like a 60-minute skill session or that you're running with your guys?
Yeah. So we actually we have, and with the COVID-19 limitations on how many kids you could have in the gym, usually we will have skill development every morning for 1 to 2 hours, depending on how big the groups are. We'll offer that for everybody in our program. So right now we're only able to do that with our varsity staff. We're only able to do that with our JV varsity guys. And so we have that split between 2 groups of 9 right now. So we go 2 hours in the morning and we go 2 pods of 9. And so we actually have themes of each day. So for us, we do all stationary shooting work Tuesdays and Thursdays. So and by stationary, I mean anything catch and shoot. So it could be on the run. It could be inside out stuff. It could be swivel stuff. Like it could be any number of things, but you're not going to dribble the ball at all when you take those shots. And we have, I think every program wants to make more shots. Shot making is critical for us with the pace that we want to play at. Guys being able to and comfortable shooting inside out, right foot, left foot, right foot, catching on the run, catching off pin downs, catching off curls. So we're working through all of those different things on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Mondays is going to be all rip throughs and jab stuff. So we talk a lot in our offense about being able to do everything off 1 to 2 dribbles. And it's not that we want to limit creativity. And I know there's a bunch of stuff on social media with graphics and images, but once you get over that kind of 2-3 dribble mark, that possession becomes a lot less efficient and a lot less productive. And so we work a lot on jab steps, rip through stuff where you're getting people on your sides. Obviously right now we can't do a ton of contact, but working with guys, finishing off contact, holding off defenders. And then Wednesday stuff is going to be more of your open floor dribble attack stuff. So we're really trying to get the ball off the rim, get out and run and have guys be able to make plays downhill. We think our biggest advantages are within those first couple seconds of the possession. And so for the ability for our guys to be able to attack full speed going downhill is a crucial piece. Then Fridays, we do a lot of ball screen stuff. So I'll actually break off our front court guys those days. We'll go through post progression stuff with them just so that they're getting a refresh on. We don't dump it into the post a lot. Like we have right now, we have a 6'8", 265-pound kid, Joe Alt, that's a high major football kid. We have another 6'10" kid that's a junior who's made huge progress for us. And then we have a 6'9" kid that actually just transferred in, who's a big time athlete, but we will not dump it in back to the basket in the post a ton. But we want those guys to be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. So we'll do a quick refresh of our post progression. And then our guards will be doing all ball screen reads those days. And then our front court guys will be doing a lot of like pick and pop stuff. Cause we have a ball screen continuity that we run for, I'd say 40% of our possessions. So
yeah, that's good stuff. I wrote a ton of notes down. I like the theme of the day, right? So kids know, it's like an education you want to have. You're not learning about 5 different subjects in a social studies class. You're going to focus on one thing. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's really valuable for coaches to hear. I want to talk a little bit more about your offense. You guys play with good pace. Like you said, you have a lot of skilled players, but you also have some bigs. And so what are some of your transition offense roles and responsibilities? Do you have set spots? Do you play around the 5 and the 4 guards are kind of interchangeable? What is your transition offense philosophy and what does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. A lot of it is predicated on who gets the rebound, and we don't have a situation for like every person on the floor, but it's really one of 2 situations. If our big is in front of the player, if the big is trailing the play, we'll set a drag screen basically every time down the floor if our big is trailing the play, which is frequently with our Joe Alt is our 5 right now, and when he's trailing that play, he's just such a big blocker. So and we obviously, we have some pretty talented guards, and so trying to get them with a head of steam in transition, they're always encouraged to push the ball and advance the ball. We talk about push passes in our offense. Like when we're pushing in transition, we want to take one or less dribbles once that ball gets advanced off the rebound. And so obviously, but we have, when you have a kid like Tayson, when you have a kid like CJ O'Hara, you do want the ball in their hands a lot. But we always try to trust the fact that, somebody that's open ahead of the ball, it's kind of the thing that you hear it from like 4th grade basketball up. If somebody's open in front of you, pitch the ball ahead, put pressure on the rim, make the defense contract so that we can get stuff going inside out. As far as we did early in the season last year, we're at an interesting time because of the amount of talent that is in our program now in comparison to my first year. We had 6 seniors and they were all pretty good. We had a few college level players. But then there was kind of a transitional year there where our talent didn't warrant playing at a crazy pace. And so from a transition perspective, we really tried not to push tempo at all the year before last. And then now this year, we've had a lot of discussions, or over the last, I guess, 18 months, we've had a lot of discussions around this notion of skill development versus structure. And so early in the season last year, we talked a lot about like a progression, secondary. Like I was really close with Dave Thorson while he was here, and like Thor had a very structured secondary offense, and there's, I guess, reasonable minds can differ on it, but we've arrived at this notion that we want the best players to be able to make plays. We don't want them thinking, okay, now I have to pass the ball here and now I have to cut here. And so we had a secondary offense that we stuck with for maybe 5-6 weeks, and we felt like guys were just kind of running to spots as opposed to seeing the whole floor and making them play. And obviously, you've had some awesome teams the past couple of years. Your best players are going to make a way better decision than you're going to make for them. And so, and they're, if they feel like they have that autonomy, it's going to be more likely they're going to make big shots. It's going to be more likely that they're going to kind of quarterback things going on the floor. And so you talked about secondary, we try to push the ball with pace. We try to rim run with the 5. We always set that trail drag screen. If they're behind the play, we try to push the ball up the wings. We're trying to score in the first 2 to 3 seconds is really what it boils down to.
I love the point you hit on just about the autonomy with your basketball players, because I feel like, and that's our points per game, we score a lot of points as well. We're not playing the Northwest Suburban Conference schedule that you guys are, but we're able to fill it up a little bit. And I think so much what we've had success with is like you hit on it, is like when a kid's thinking about the spot they need to go to, how can they shoot it with confidence? Because they might not even be sure they're in the right location on the court. And so just by having just like general concepts and areas, like you mentioned, the drag screen, look for the rim run, I think provides kids with a way better palette to be successful offensively.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys had, a pretty young team, but talented, like you mentioned. So how do you balance? Obviously, you guys were a top 5 or 6 QRF team the entire season, top 5 or 6 in the polls as well, knowing that you had Minnehaha at the end of it, jump into your section this year. So how did you balance youth development while also, trying to develop youth development while also being competitive and, obviously trying to win night in, night out and try to win a Northwest Suburban Conference championship and, put yourselves in a spot to at least be competitive with Minnehaha in a section final?
Full disclosure, I did not think we were going to be as good as we were this year. Like, I didn't think we were going to have the success that we did. We went to Minnesota Gopher team camp in the summer, and we knew that CJ and Tommy and Tayson were talented. But I had just never had, and I mean, whether it's AAU high school stuff, like I've had a decent amount of exposure to, I guess high school and grassroots basketball in Minnesota over the last 10 years. You just don't see 3 and 4A teams that have a ton of success with their top couple scorers being freshmen. but those guys played against, I think we looked at, we played against in like real varsity minutes. We played against 3 freshmen the entire year. And like we were playing 3 freshmen, 25 plus minutes a game this year. We just didn't think we were going to be, had you told me before the season we were going to win 5 or 6 games, it's not like I would have been jumping for joy, but I would have looked at our schedule and said that that's definitely a possibility. And so I would say that the notion that it was going to be a developmental year for those guys, that's exactly how we approached it. Now it's hard once you start winning some games. It's hard not to get greedy. Like you keep pushing the bar up and up and up. And it can be positive, but it can also be dangerous because those guys are still freshmen. And I want to be really clear too. Those guys produced a lot of production for us, but like they have no idea what the hell's going on, like none. And they're great kids and they want to do well. But a lot of times, and we watch so much film because for them to, because in the moment they're saying like, coach, I'm running as hard as I can. I'm going as hard as I can. Like I am in a stance here. I did cut hard. I did bump this cutter. I did set that screen. And then you go back and you're like, dude, you're not. And, but their threshold for discomfort is so low. And so, so much of our success was the leadership of a Devin Berger, of a DJ Akpati, of a Joe Alt, of a Carter Workey, and those guys who have been around us now for a couple of years, helping share. And it takes a selfless group to, because I don't care what anybody says. If you're a sophomore going into your junior year, you don't really know who the freshmen are that are coming in, or you don't know some of the younger guys. You're looking at it and saying like, well, like you're kind of projecting out in your mind, like what your role is going to be. And all of a sudden these young guys, I had it happen to me, my senior year going into my senior year at Creed, and we had Michael Floyd and John Nance and Broderick Binns, and we had all these, eventual pro athletes. And I'm not thinking about those guys at all, because I'm just thinking like, well, I'm going to move up to the next grade, and then I'm going to be one of the studs. And so for those guys to, I guess share that wealth or share that role and responsibility, and understand that we were better with those guys contributing, it made it a lot easier for it to the point of your question, to hit on that dual, have success in the moment, but also understand that this is a development process. And we talked a lot about it being a 2-year season, because we return everybody on our roster, which is a unique thing for, obviously, having the amount of success that we did last year.
Talk about the culture of accountability that you've created within your program. Yeah,
no. And it's the time at Prep Hoops, and I know we're going to talk about kind of the company side a little bit later, but it's been so valuable to, be involved in an early stage business, because I think, especially as a young coach, and like I've even evolved, going into year 4 now. I think you want to control every aspect of your program. You want to have your footprint on everything. And I think as time goes, you start to realize this notion of self-policing, amongst the team, and not overstating stuff, not trying to be too loud, not trying to be too boisterous about it, but, just very clearly conveying, what the expectations are, and having a baseline of, and not having too many rules, but having the rules you do have be ones that are absolutely non-negotiable. Whether it's if a kid walks into the gym late, and we've had, Tayson walked into practice late, the day before our first game in sections, and like we sat him. He didn't play. And this is I believe one of the more talented, skill wise, one of the more talented guards I've ever seen in Minnesota. And we sat him the first game of sections. DJ Akpati the year before was late, the day, and he had, we're not talking, a half hour late. They're walking in, 2 minutes late to their first hour class. And I'm big on that punctuality component, like when you got to show up at something. And so that's a non-negotiable for us. And so I think having rules that really matter to you about body language, the way the guys communicate, without having it be a dictatorship or have it be something where the kids fear you, conveying the importance of some of these things that we do have some control over. And then when the kids start policing those things, it makes all the difference in the world. And that's really the point that we've hit now, where, we're not begging guys to come to workouts. It's really more like, hey, we got a lot of guys competing for minutes. If you want to come, we got a good opportunity for you to get better. But I'm not going to sit here and hold a gun to your head and say you need to do these things. But I think we've hit a point now where guys, they feel like they're hurting each other more than they're hurting their own personal brand, which I think that's when you can really start to get some work done.
Yeah, that's a great point where it's that accountability of not letting your teammates down. Cause they know, hey, I might go to this social gathering or whatever till midnight and I'm not going to want to get up in the morning and go play basketball, but whatever, I might not get better today, but no, if the teammates know you're letting them down, I think that policing amongst the group, and just like not even where the kids have to be like, get your ass to workouts tomorrow, but just like they know if I'm not there, they're going to be pissed at me the next day when I show up. I think that's so important. You mentioned on time. What's one more of your non-negotiables that you have with your kids?
Body language, and that's we run that risk, right, as coaches, because these kids get so much coach speak. There's so many little video clips on social media, and you try to put this stuff to kids in a way that they can digest it, or in the way that they're interested in consuming it, and so kind of meeting them where they're at. But yeah, I think this notion of how visible you are at all times, like everything is being filmed now. Your teammates are always watching you, and quite frankly, like that was a big thing for us, especially with our younger players, with how talented they are. You walk into a youth basketball tournament, like those kids were 1 year removed from playing youth basketball, and where emotions are on your sleeve and everybody's yelling at the refs and you're breathing on the court. So like the sway of one possession here or there, it could impact guys a lot. And then that starts to snowball amongst the group, and you don't even need to say anything. So this idea of, sit up and like when you're on the bench, and like have your elbows up on your knees, like be engaged in the game, be ready to go. And so body language and like reaction to stuff, we always talk about having, a couple of second touch point with like if a ball goes out of bounds, if you have a bad shot, like somebody go physically.
I was listening to, I think it was one of the redraftable ringer pods with Bill Simmons. I think it was on the 2003 draft. They were talking about Carmelo Anthony. And they talked about, with NBA guys like Jason Tatum, they use, for example, how much more mature these guys are coming into the NBA because everything is on social media. They know if they're at a EYBL event and they're an idiot, that's going to follow them all the way into their college recruitment, into their pre-draft stock, and into their NBA career. And I feel like you almost hit on that, where obviously in a much smaller sense, our high school kids are starting to realize that as well, especially the kids who have scholarship aspirations, because they know like one bad, clip of them being an idiot to a ref or getting into it with an opponent or a teammate, like that's going to follow them, and that's going to hurt them. So I think there's definitely downfalls to social media, which people could talk for hours about, but there's definitely some positives, and it's that self-regulation where kids know that people are always watching. Is that something you've noticed as we kind of transition now to your business side of this? Something that you've noticed with kids, throughout the recruiting process, even in the handful of years that, you've been operating Prep Hoops?
Yeah. I would say that there's more, I don't know if anxiety is the right word. I think there's more consciousness of recruitment in all aspects, and it gets a little bit dangerous because like we all want to like microwave this recruiting process, and we want it to happen like right now. And none of us really know, or a lot of the families just have no idea how it actually happens. They just know they want it to happen. And so, from a consciousness on social media perspective, I think that's definitely true. There also is, like we're in the midst of like a cultural, I guess, shift, and part of it is just like the music kids listen to. Part of it is just this culture of like, you almost want to look like you don't care that much. Like it's dorky to act like you really care, and to just like kind of put yourself out there and say, hey, these are my goals. This is my passion, and I'm going to pursue this fearlessly. And so, I think specifically from a social perspective, yes, there are definitely, with tools like Huddle, with tools like NCSA, with, some of the stuff that we do at Prep Hoops, there are definitely some kids who take advantage of that to help build and market their brands, and kind of build a social profile that way. But I still think that kids are behind, or I think a lot more kids miss the boat on how to truly brand themselves when it comes to that recruiting process. And I'm not just talking Division I kids. I'm talking about kids at all levels, like where, a coach could pull you up on Instagram or Twitter and like they could get to know you a little bit before even communicating with you, and you could build positive equity with them, before you guys ever have an initial conversation.
So we'll take a step back here. Talk about the history of how Prep Hoops came together. Obviously, you
Yeah,
mentioned you and Jake were working with Minnesota Magic, and I know you guys did a little. I think you did a trip together. I think he was still at Augsburg. I want to say
yeah,
when you guys were coaching there
yep,
together. So just
yep.
give the background about a couple minute oral history about how that came about.
Yeah, for sure. So Jake and I met in what would have been, and it's jogging me the actual year. So it was after my sophomore year, after his senior year. So that would have been '08. So the spring of '08, we met, coached the Minnesota Magic team together. He started going to grad school at the University of Minnesota at the Carlson School of Business. He was getting his MBA, and I started a North Star Hoops Report, which is the Minnesota chapter and um, Jake reached out what would have been, within a few months, and he was taking an entrepreneurship course at Minnesota, and he just said, hey, can I basically take a look under the hood and just kind of see what you're doing? Like he was on the academic side of it, and he wanted to, just look at a business, and I had no business plan. This was totally like a passion project, an opportunity to make some supplemental income, but didn't have like some picture of world domination, I guess. And when we sat down and started talking, it was the conversation kind of started to build momentum around what the level of interest would potentially be in another sport or in another state or even cross genders. So fast forward, we went into a 50-50 partnership together. We started North Star Girls Hoops and North Star Football News. So we actually initially thought, okay, should we try to, I guess, dominate the prep sports market in Minnesota first. Girls basketball actually launched better than boys basketball did. And then football had a pretty good launch, but was very nuanced in the way that market works. And so our first expansion site was in April of 2014 when we went to Iowa. And now we're, way fast forward. I think we just launched our 81st website. Boys basketball, girls basketball, volleyball covers the lion's share of that, but we have rapid expansion now going nationally in football. So we just launched our 5th football state in California, and we're adding a couple of states a month right now for the different websites that we have. So Jake acts as our chief executive officer. I act as our chief growth officer. So I work on the event side of the business, really manage like all of our partnerships and do all the sales on that side. And any like new business development opportunities falls under me. So really like revenue growth. And Jake really runs the business day to day. So manages a lot of the staff, the IT, finance. He has more of a macro lens into the business, and he's, he is as good of a leader and just an integrator as I've been around and all this stuff. So it's been a great marriage.
I'm not sure if you know the background, but I'm a Brainerd guy. My brother was the same age as Jake, so I watched him make a lot of. You mentioned his illustrious career that he had at Carleton. I watched him make a lot of big shots throughout his
Yeah.
youth basketball career at Brainerd,
Yeah.
and so hats off to being able to. Us Brainerd people can be a little little hard to work with. So hats off to you for being able to deal with working with a Brainerd grad on a daily basis.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
So you obviously running a business. You're in charge of the growth, as you mentioned. You're also coaching a high school team and also with a growing family yourself. So
Yeah.
how do you balance all three of those and make sure that you're not, letting one side of it drop?
Yeah. No, I'm fortunate because the two biggest time commitments in my life really dovetail nicely. Like the calendars of those schedules really work well together. It's really when one ramps up, the other is kind of ramping down, and it's a lot of similar types of interactions and conversations. So with the grassroots events the earliest events that are going to take place, those are going to be like Florida and California. Those events are going to start, like mid-March to late March. Well, that's right when state tournaments are wrapping up for high school basketball, and those will run through August. And so, but with June being a down period for grassroots basketball and AAU teams. So we're not running a bunch of tournaments. So really when I can have my hands on our guys at TG, that's when we're not doing a ton on the event side. And there's never a point where it's like you're 100% on one and 0 on the other. But I think that's part of the dichotomy with high school coaching in general. I think a lot of times people don't fully appreciate, whether you're a social studies teacher, you're running a Fortune 500 company, you're wearing multiple hats at all times while you're coaching a high school sport. And so there is the dual balance, but it allows me to be accessible at the times I need to be accessible. I'm able to get to, all practices, all games, all scouting reports, and be at school when I need to be. And if I need to make stuff up either early in the morning or late at night at home, or at our office, wherever, I'm able to do those things. So I'm one of the very few fortunate people that basketball is truly my entire life.
So you mentioned when you gave the example when you were playing at Cretan and the pro athletes that were coming up behind you, and the same thing at TG now, and you got a really good, freshman coming in that the juniors or seniors might not know about. Off the same kind of chip off the same block here with that. When you have a kid that is thinks they're a Division I talent, right? But you're seeing them, maybe that's a kid in your program, maybe that's a kid that you're seeing at a combine, but they're really a Division III talent, which is not. MIAC basketball is really good. Division III basketball is exceptional across the country. How do you have those conversations without making it seem like it's like an abrasive conversation, or you're completely the kid feels insulted about how you're evaluating them as a prospect?
Yeah, so I think the commitment that we make to guys is that we're going to make sure, and I think we have a unique ability to. I've been really fortunate, and some of it has to do with, coaching at D1 Minnesota and having as many Division I kids as we had there. Every kid, shouldn't say every kid, a lot of kids want to play Division I basketball, or think they want to play Division I basketball, or think they kind of have an understanding for what that looks like. Most of the time, it's not because they think they're better than they are. I think it's because they don't realize how hard it is and how unique it is to be able to get a scholarship at any level. Like DJ Akpati for us, he's been with us a couple of years. Like, he just got offered effectively a full scholarship at the University of Mary. And he was excited and he was super pumped about it. But I also wanted to be sure that no matter what his reaction was, I wanted to make sure that I grabbed him and let him know how rare and unique this is, that you get an opportunity to get a free education based on your ability to play a sport. And I think that's one thing that's been dangerous about social media. Like, we see these offers get posted out there. We see, like for Minnesota, we see Ryan James tweet these things out there, and it almost seems like it's easy. And that's a really dangerous topic, or really dangerous thought. But when you have, so for us, what we commit to kids is that there will never be a staff that will be more communicative with college programs than us. So we will make sure that colleges know who you are in the way that we email, in the way that we send stuff out via text, in the way that we help you put highlight tapes together and get stuff distributed. But I also tell kids, I will never lie to a college. Like, if you show up late all the time to practice, if you act like a dick to your teammates, if you shot, 36% from three, if you I'm not going to lie to colleges about what you've done. And that's helped us build equity with schools over time. So we're never going to oversell a kid, but we will make sure that schools get in front of kids. So, our junior class last year, due to a combination of guys that we had and being able to get guys over, we had over 100 colleges that came to our open gyms in the fall. And those kids are getting up and down. They're playing. Some days they're just doing skill workouts depending on who's there. Well, college coaches get paid to decide who's good enough and who's not. And so, what we commit to is we'll make sure that we get you in front of people. But then once the market speaks, we need to take a step back and determine, okay, what makes sense here. You know, Devin Berger, that's on our roster right now. He has Northern Sun Schools recruiting him, but he also is, you know, one of the best students in our building. And so he's got the, you know, U Chicago's, the Emorys that are interested in him. And so we're working through these things right now because it's like, okay, well, if you could, you know, potentially be a scholarship, are you willing to, you know, forego some of your, I guess, academic pedigree to try to get a cheaper tab on your college, or would you go to a school? We had a kid, Charlie Jacob, a couple of years ago. He's playing at Wash U right now. Well, I mean, you could look up on their website, but Wash U is probably 65, 70 grand a year, all in. And Charlie chose to go that path. And he's having an awesome career. He's having an awesome time. And you know, he'll reap the benefits of that later. So I think when it comes to, you know, kids having unrealistic expectations, I think we try really hard just to educate kids on the numbers, what the percentages are of kids that are coming out and going out to certain levels. Even in the state of Minnesota, I mean, you could go through and ask, like, the 2022 class right now, you could ask those kids, and it's a very good class in Minnesota, but you could ask those kids, like, if you went down that list, you'd probably have, you know, a couple hundred kids who think they want to play Division I basketball. Well, the numbers tell us in Minnesota that like a good year, you're going to get, you know, 13 to 15 Division I players at best. So are you in that top 15? I don't know. I mean, maybe, and you could say you're going to defy the odds. That's great, and we hope that's the case. But you also need to make sure that you're comfortable with what Plan B might look like.
Your ranking system is very in depth. As a coach who's had kids in the ranking system, I've always thought they've been extremely fair, and I've seen kids that have been ahead of my guys and below my guys, and it seems like those have always been very valid and accurate ratings. How much do you see from your guys', you know, you're ranking kids, you know, 250, 300 kids at time in a class within the state of Minnesota, when there's only, I don't know what, maybe 50, you know, maybe 70 spots in colleges. If you think about the MIAC schools, the NSIC schools, and the University of Minnesota, obviously our kids are going to other states as well, but, you know, I'm just throwing a number out at 70. And so how many times do you think that those rankings are used by college coaches versus just, okay, yeah, I know where this kid is at, but they're going to go do a lot of the work themselves and find out where that kid is at as a prospect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we, as, and tooting our horn a little bit, we're by far and away the largest scouting service in the country for boys and girls basketball. Just by sheer numbers of college programs that are subscribed across our websites, and almost all of those colleges subscribe to either 5 states or to the entire country, which, you know, at a macro level tells you that there is a level of trust and equity that's being put into those rankings. We talk all the time about it doesn't necessarily matter where a kid is ranked specifically as a number. And I know that's part of where the discussion comes in. Like, wait, like number 74 played way better than number 70 at this tournament. And it's like, I get that, but it doesn't matter for the purposes of college programs. Like, they don't care about that at all. But college coaches use those as a benchmark to say, okay, at a large level, if I'm a high major Division I school, so if I'm North Carolina, and so a lot of these schools subscribe across the country, and we're one of dozens of resources that they're using. But if North Carolina comes in and they're looking at, you know, rising juniors, they're probably not going to look outside of the top 5 kids in our rankings. And I can tell you right now, we usually don't mess that like that part of the rankings. Usually don't mess that up. Like usually the top 5 kids are in the top 5 somewhere, and you can reassemble them if you want, but like that saves those guys hours, because then they just know, okay, so these are the few kids that we need to be considering, because they know that in Minnesota there's probably not going to be more than, in the best years, like the 2017 class, there was, I think, number 7 went to a mid-major, so that you had 6 high major kids. And even 2020, the class that just went, you know, I think, well, you got Ben, Dawson, Jalen, Dane, Stephen Crowell, Kerwin. Trying to think if there was another high major kid in that class. There may be.
Yeah, 8 at the most, right? On a really good year, you'll get 8 at the most.
Yeah, exactly. And those kids will be doing so well that they would get, they would get recognized by 24/7 Sports or some national service in other ways. So we have always erred on the side of trying to get more kids included in the rankings because there are so many different types of roster spots, and you have it like, where like a Crown College may reach out to you, like a UMAC program that has a good culture in their program and has, like a faith-based element to what they're doing, or has like different, but it's just a different level of basketball. You may be able to get the 7th or 8th kid in your rotation, like they may be able to go play college basketball. And in a good high school program, I'm looking at our workouts right now saying that there are kids that are going to play maybe no varsity minutes for us as seniors that could go play college basketball just based on the experience that they're getting with us day to day and some of the guys that they're competing with every day. They could potentially go play college basketball in like at a lower end MIAC school, at a UMAC school, at a lower end WIAC school. And I'm not saying that they'd be the best player in the world, but when you rank out that far, it gives schools an opportunity at those much lower levels to, because that's the Crown Colleges of the world, the Crookstons of the world, or I'm sorry, not the Crookstons of the world, but the Minnesota Morrises of the world. A lot of times they are in the back part of those rankings trying to figure out which kids actually want to go play college basketball. Because a lot of times you have rural kids or dual sport kids or kids who may be considering, different paths or picking a college based on academics or other things. So they have to cast a wider net. So we just try to give a wider net on the back part of those rankings so that schools have more kids to be able to sift through. It's pretty safe to say the top 25 kids in the rankings, if they're not like a high major football player, most of those kids are going to go play college basketball,
And
more than not.
And as a coach, like I said, every year probably has, 1 to 3 kids somewhere in the, in the top 150. We've been, lucky enough where we're at, as a 3A school, just off probably the metro line, 15 minutes north of Elk River here. It's nice to kind of have that for me. And my end is to have those conversations with kids. Be like, you might think you're an NSIC kid, but like right now you're 77. Maybe you're up to 60, right? Maybe you got caught on the wrong day. Like you said, right? 77 to 70 to 52 might be a gap, but at least you can start to have those conversations with kids, and it gives coaches, I feel like, some support and some data to have some of those tougher conversations where it's not just me being an ass, being like, oh, coach doesn't think I can play at the next level. It's like, well, you've played at AU and you're here. These are the kids that are getting the offers. And so, it really helps from a coaching lens and being able to have those conversations with, and we have, half dozen kids right now that are, going to be playing college basketball next year. And that's great. And they, I think maybe 1, maybe 2 have, some sort of scholarship at the NAIA level. So just being able to have those conversations based off rankings has been beneficial to me, I know personally as a coach. A couple things here. What skills are you noticing that translate best for high school athletes as they move towards either Division III, Division II, or Division I levels?
Yeah, I think it's more about like the work habits and just understanding how much of a job it is. I think that gets lobbed out to kids a lot right now, where it's this idea that we try to hammer it down kids' throats, like, this is a job, like these are the best days of your life, and like when you get to college, it's not that it's miserable, it's just a lot. Like when you talk about scouting reports, you talk about travel, you talk about managing the academic side, getting back from a road trip at 1 a.m. and then having to be at 8 a.m. class the next day. Like there's so many components to playing at the college level that exist off the court. And then you have to be able to perform on the court. And so I think the kids who genuinely love to play and love to, I guess, figure out different ways to get better and improve themselves. That more than anything. And then, physically on the court, just the ability to make shots. I mean, it's like the college game. I was talking to a kid who played for me a couple years ago, who just transferred to Northern Iowa. He was at George Mason and transferred to Northern Iowa. And, and he played at a good mid-major A-10 school. And he's like just blown away by those kids' ability to make shots. And so, and you talk about it a lot as a coach, like that's something that you can control, like your ability to take and make shots. So shot making is a premium. Taking care of the ball is a huge premium. That definitely keeps kids off the court early in their college careers, just like not being able to value possession or not having possession value when you get in. when you get to the college level. So yeah, I would say being able to manage the college schedule for off the court perspective, and then like being able to knock down shots at game speed while you're tired, while you're fatigued, while you're processing scouting reports and stuff. And then just being able to take care of the basketball.
What is the best thing? And you mentioned it with those kind of three: taking care of the basketball, making shots, and being able to adjust to the the college level schedule. Which are all great things. I think that's going to be across Division III, Division II, Division I. Obviously it's not going to be as extensive of a schedule at the Division III school versus Division I, but it's still going to be a significant step up from your high school expectations and obligations that you have as a high school athlete. And so, what are some things that high school coaches can do to help their players learn some of those skills or prepare them for the next level?
Yeah, that's that's a really good question. I mean, I think obviously every high school coach, kids know when you're faking it. Kids know when you're not being authentic, and I don't know that it's sustainable to ever like be somebody that you're not. One of the biggest things that I think we're in the midst of right now is this transition of it's not a new regime of coaches, because it's kind of happening through a trickle effect. But if I were to talk to you, or I were to talk to Brian Schnettler, or I were to talk to Chris Hopkins, the whole philosophy around like how much time they're actually spending to like build their program, and like their expectations of what that looks like. I think it's become more of this like 24/7, 365 thing. And I think like younger coaches getting in, I think there are less young coaches getting in because of some of the trepidation around those things. Because it is like, it's financially it's a loss, like for most of us. Some of the bigger schools, obviously, like you get into being able to run massive camps, there's financial opportunity there, but for the most part, like we're working for pennies on the hour. And so I think being highly visible, and giving your kids a ton of opportunities to get into the gym would be a huge recommendation for me from a skill perspective. But with that being said, there aren't going to be for a lot. There are a lot of coaches, especially coaches that have been around for a while, that would prefer that the job be really from November to March, and that they're totally warranted in feeling that way. And there are definitely, I mean, there are guys like Kenny Novak over at Hopkins. He's in their gym every single day. So it's not an old versus young thing, but I think it's just the position has changed a lot over the past 10, 15, 20 years. Even where when I was in high school, and like Jerry Klein so I was on Jerry Klein's first team that he coached at Cretin, and our open gyms, we had no skill development. Our open gyms were maybe a couple times a week. We played in one summer league, but you were kind of left to your own devices in the off season. And where today, their off-season obligations at Cretin are much different, because the families are expecting more, and the expectations on coaches are just higher. So I think as much as you can open up your gym and be accessible to your kids and give them enriched skill development opportunities, whether you're hiring somebody, I don't know if you guys have had Reed House come work with you guys. Like we've had Reed come in with Yep.
You're good.
Gotcha. Sorry, let me get my train. We're always trying to get different voices, different people coming in and working with our guys, whether it's different speakers, whatever. I think just really having the kids have no opportunity to come back and say, hey, like we didn't have the resources to be successful. So, and that's in an ideal situation, like I am at all of our workouts. And so for me right now, like I have enough gas in the tank. My schedule allows me to. It's not, I don't think that makes me better than any other coach out there. I don't think that makes our program better than anybody else. Right now, for where we're at in our program, I believe that like my visibility, because if I'm at everything, it makes it a lot tougher for a kid to come back and say, well, coach wasn't there. Why would I have to be there? It must not be that important. So even if somebody else is running our skill stuff, and we're trying to get them a different voice for that day, I'll still be involved on the court in that workout. So yeah, I think just having your gym be wide open, that was the commitment that we made right away at TG, and it benefited us a lot. And quite frankly, for us, not having a youth program and not having a younger portion to our school, getting young kids exposure to our building in the Twin Cities metro area, because we have kids that are from all over the place. You know, like we have kids that come all the way from Orono or from Rogers. And so, you know, getting kids exposure to our building by opening our gym up has been a beneficial thing for us.
Coach, last question. This is a quick one here, coming from Brad Bigler. You probably saw this on Twitter. Who's winning one-on-one between you and Reed?
I just feel bad for anybody that has to watch that. I know the game would be played below the rim, and there would be a lot of three-pointers shot and a lot of palms on knees for that game. But I think that would probably have to be a few-part series to be able to get an 11-point game in.
Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Definitely a different perspective with your side of it with Prep Hoops. I appreciate you taking your time here out of your Sunday to come on and record with us.
No, it's been great. Keep up the great work, man.
Thank you.